Hello folks, this is Scott with Dallas Paint Correction and Auto Detailing here in Dallas, Texas. I had a company send me this a couple of weeks ago and I've been working with it. It's the, how do you guys say that? Is it Eco or Echo? I can't remember, but sorry if I'm saying it wrong. It's their professional grade 58 volt cordless lithium ion blower. This blower is pretty impressive. 550 CFMs and I think about 140 miles per hour worth of wind, which is kind of cool. It's got plenty of power to dry the car. It is cordless. That's kind of got some pros and cons to it. It's nice not to have a cord attached to it. You can work around the car pretty quickly when you're drying it without being tethered to a cord, so that's kind of nice. The only downside to it is what happens is when you squeeze that trigger, you get a nice tremendous amount of CFM and miles per hour, but if you want the maximum from the tool, you got to hit a little turbo button on top of the handle, and then you'll get the true 550 CFM and 140 miles an hour worth of wind. But when you're hitting the turbo button, I'm only getting about 15 minutes worth of battery life. If you don't hit the turbo button, you'll get about 30 minutes. But I find that when you want to push water off a car or lift water off a car that has no wax or sealant on it, you want to hit that turbo button. But it's pretty impressive, but battery life isn't going to be all that great. It's also about $230 on a retail level. But again, if you've got the money and you want that type of power and you're only taking care of 1 or 2 cars, this may be a great option for you because this thing's got tremendous power. I love it. I just don't think for the money, it kind of, you guys have seen my works review on the blower that I use. Yeah, there might be times I use this if I don't have power available to me. If I'm doing a quick blow dry on an engine bay or something, it makes it very convenient, so I'm going to keep it. What I'm going to do is, the machine comes obviously with the blower and the exhaust, the vent tube out the front, or however you want to look out, the outlet tube. Also comes with a charger and 58 volt battery to go in the back of this thing. Let me get this thing down and just wet the car down and show you its ability to dry the paint. It's pretty impressive. I think it's just as good as my works machine that has high CFM. Like I said, there's no wax and sealant on this car, so I'm going to have to hit the turbo button to be able to push that water off. But let's see how it works. I tell you what, it's pretty loud. You're going to want a set of earmuffs with this if you're using it in the turbo mode, but it's very effective. It's got plenty of power. Yes, because there's no wax and sealant on the car, so the water will fight you a little bit, but this will push it off far faster. Part of this video is also going to be comparing the leaf blower to the Metrovac blower, because I've had a lot of questions about that. Guys, in my opinion, when it comes to drying cars after 26 years, if you choose to use this method, a leaf blower, whether it's cordless or you've got a corded one, as long as your CFMs is really high, that's important to be able to drive water off the car. The leaf blower is far more effective than a Metrovac blower. It's also safer, and I'll tell you why. A lot of people get concerned. They were asking me, Scott, this thing doesn't have a filter on it. Aren't you worried about dust getting in this thing and blowing out the tube? Well, here's the reality, folks. Right now, as I stand here at this car, there is ambient dust floating around that we cannot see with our eyes. So even if this thing was filtered, when I squeeze the trigger, it can only be filtered to the end of the tube. The dust between the tube and the car, because you're not going to be putting this tube right up against the car, you're probably going to be about a foot away. You're blowing dust on the car anyway. Don't overthink the moment. If you had this leaf blower 1 inch off the ground and trying to blow your car dry at the same time, that's different, because now the machine can pull dust and dirt off the ground and get into the machine. That's potentially dangerous. So when I use a leaf blower, I keep it up by my hip at all times. I'm blowing no dust on the car except what's already in the ambient air to begin with. I can't remove that. All of us are going to agree to that. Now, when it comes to the MetroVac, guys, this is very important to understand. It's a high-quality tool, but if you're a mobile detailer or even a car enthusiast and you have the 8-horsepower blower and it's got wheels on it, if you're not mounting it on your garage wall, where are you putting it? You're putting it on the ground, and it's got wheels on it. The back rear end of that machine where the filter is about 2 inches away from the ground, where the most dust and dirt is going to be. Sometimes if you're a mobile detailer, you might be working at customers' home that have a lot of dirt and debris on the driveway. Folks, I hate to say this, I don't shoot the messenger, but if the MetroVac didn't have a filter in the rear and you were using it on the ground with its wheels on a dirty driveway and it had no filter on it, folks, it'd be the most dangerous blower you could ever use. It actually can pull and suck dirt off the ground because it's so powerful. You are now holding, in essence, a sandblaster. Thank God it's got a filter on the back, but in my reality, in my world, when I look at the R&D of that machine, it's actually its weakness as well. If you're going to hang it on your garage wall, try to make sure that when you hang the MetroVac, you put the filter pointed towards the ground, but not all the way real low on the ground, couple of feet off the floor, and make sure your filter is pointed down. Why? Because we have ambient dust that floats around and will want to go into the top of the filter if you've got the filter pointed up towards the ceiling. It's just my opinion, folks. I've used it and I've seen issues with it. The other thing is the leaf blower can give you more volume. It can give you more surface area. The other thing too is when you're pulling the MetroVac, it's made out of metal on wheels. I don't want anything potentially that could roll into the car because of my ignorance when I'm pulling the tube and the thing got away from me and hit the car. It could potentially scratch the paint. Yes, this can too, but here's the deal. I'd rather scratch the paint with a plastic tube, although this one's not. To be honest with you, you'd want to cover this up. It's got a metal outlet, it's got a metal band on it. I put some tape on this thing to cover that up, but in essence it's plastic. If I hit the car with this and if it didn't have that metal piece on it, I'm hitting the car with plastic. The scratch would be far less damaging than a piece of metal on wheels rolling towards the car. Not only could it scratch it, it could dent it depending on what type of car I'm using. I don't like pulling the MetroVac because it's on wheels by its hose. The hose also likes to blow off a lot. I used to have to put a hose clamp on it because it had so much power that the hose itself wasn't designed all that well. It would blow off all the time. It's awfully heavy. When I started to realize its potential danger because it was on the ground and sucking dirt up off the driveway, I had to start picking it up with me and walking around and blowing it with the hose in my other hand. It was exhausting. It's a problem. I went to these. No, they're not filtered, but it doesn't need to be. You're not putting it real low to the ground and trying to dry the car. The ambient dust that's in the air is already hitting your car when you're driving at 80 miles an hour anyway. You don't have to overthink it. The leaf blower, in my opinion, is far better for drying a vehicle than the MetroVac alone, in my opinion, folks. There's a lot of issues. I don't want to say they're horrible issues, but if you really think outside the box and look at the design, it could be potentially far more dangerous than a leaf blower could ever be on your car. Just my opinion. But I like this machine for $230. Would I buy it? Well, it was sent to me. I'm grateful. I'll keep it in my arsenal. But I don't think you guys have to run out and get it unless you don't have any power available. Just remember the battery itself is only going to last about 30 minutes. If you're hitting the turbo button, it'll last about 15 minutes. This turbo button's a little finicky. You really got to make sure you're pushing it. If your thumb kind of slides off a little bit, it will go up and down in power. That kind of drives me nuts sometimes. It seems like the button's finicky, but I love it. It works really well. And of course, if there was a wax and sealant on this car with 550 CFM, the water would blow right off this thing. But there's my opinion. Does this thing need to be filtered? No, unless you're laying it on the ground and trying to dry the car, then common sense would tell us it does have the potential to pick up dust off the driveway. The MetroVac could potentially be dangerous if your filter's got a tear in it or it started to clog and it's not working properly. It's 2 inches off the ground. If that's the way you're using it, just be careful with that thing on really dirty driveways. Folks, I love you all. $230 versus my Works machine that I paid $52 for. Yes, I got to plug it in, but I think the Works is a better deal. But I wanted to tell the company what I thought of this. I think it's great. The only other concern I have, this is hard plastic. This is not soft touch plastic. If you're putting this in and out of your truck all the time as a mobile detailer, be careful. If something fell on this or you dropped it, this is going to crack. I like soft touch or maybe like a moldable plastic than this hard shell stuff. Just another thing to consider. Love you all. Talk to you soon.